Most people think about financial planning as boring, calculators, spreadsheets, and all those things we avoid like the plague. But the truth is, that's only half of the story. Really, financial planning is only half about the numbers, but half about the emotions and how you process them. Let me grab Walt and we'll dive on in.
Oh, this is a good episode today. Walter Storholt here alongside Steve Smith, certified financial planner. And yeah, we're talking about feelings. Do they belong in your financial plan? I think I know the answer, but should be fun. I don't know if we'll experience a range of emotions and feelings on today's episode, Steve, but maybe. You never know. This will be kind of fun.
Might need some tissue or something. I don't know.
Yeah, you never know. Have to see if we got any nearby within grabbing distance. We might have to hit pause and go get them if we need it. No, we're going to look at some scenarios. I'm going to toss them out to Steve, and I'm just curious where Steve has heard these in the office before. Has he seen this emotional side of financial planning come out in these areas? And is that okay? Or in some of these situations, do we really need to strip out the emotions and say, no, we got to just go with what the numbers say here? So that's what we're looking for, I guess. Permission where it's okay to let feelings either be part of the process, or maybe even okay to lead us, or when we really need to put those feelings in the rearview mirror. And I'm going to imagine it's very different based on the scenario that we're going to bring up. So you ready to dive in?
Let's do this. I can't wait for the questions.
All right. So a popular conversation as people approach retirement and get into it is, thinking about where they live and how much they care about where they live. I got to think this is a pretty highly emotional thing that's going to kind of lead the way, maybe in some ways, but you tell me as the advisor.
Yeah, these questions come in multiple different, I'll give you a couple different ones. A very common one is that one of the couples, or maybe sometimes both, want to live near the grandkids. So they have to decide, are we going to move there, or are we going to get a small place there, or are we going to get an RV? So that really, that where do you live isn't necessarily about moving. It can be very different variations of that, but the financial plan may or may not provide for those things. So that's where it starts to get emotional. And do we have to sell the house to buy this one over here? Is it a market that's more expensive or less expensive? And a lot of that emotion is, it's not about the house they live in. It's wanting to be near the grandkids, whatever that means, or just near the kids sometime. Yeah. And we need to reconcile the number side of financial planning with the emotional side and those needs.
Sounds like that's one area, though, where emotions lead the way. The finances obviously have to then back up what the emotions want to do, but it's okay to let the emotions kind of lead us at least down the initial path there.
Right.
Makes sense. Okay. Now, and sometimes, we may need you to tell us what we don't want to hear, right? Our emotions may want us to take an action, and you may have to say, hey, no, that's not what we're going to do here. I'm curious how that plays out in our next scenario. And that's for folks who either love getting into the nitty and gritty and the details of their investments, because that's certainly a certain mindset of people, or those who want simplicity. I don't want to know how it works. I just want it to work. As a financial planner, are you meeting people where they are, or are you trying to push people to be one way or the other because it's better for them to be that?
So this one dovetails in what I reference many times about being objective and subjective. So a lot of times people want conservative investments, but they need to get a little bit higher return. And a lot of times I'll also overlay this with how much do you want to look in on this investment. If it's on the hour, then that gets more difficult. If they're willing to check in periodically, now anybody can always look it up anytime on their phone, don't get me wrong. But if they're a little more sensitive, I have to figure out, how much do they want to be involved, and then how much pain can they take on the downside? Because nobody's worried about how much you make extra on the upside. So those are things, if they want that simplicity, we can bring that to them just by our periodic reviews, and they can always check in. But a lot of times, we need to have that upfront conversation because it's really an emotional question. Because maybe their emotions are dragging them into a return that they could retire when they're 80, which they don't want either. So it's really a back and forth there. And we go, and it dovetails right into how much involvement they want and how much they're going to get emotionally wrapped up into a downturn in the market.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I like your perspective on that one. Next scenario would be about folks feeling better if they're in debt or out of debt. I guess nobody feels better in debt, but some people are more comfortable carrying debt, and then others are like, oh my God, my emotional well being is way better if I'm debt free. And so that becomes a very central goal because they just can't have that hanging over their head. Have you ever had scenarios like that where somebody's really strongly pulled, no matter what the numbers say is the smart way to go?
Actually, this morning, Randy and Sue called in, and they were having this tug of war. They're both retired, and they're on a fixed income. They saved well. They're doing well, but they have this mortgage that kind of tailed them into retirement. But it's the good kind of mortgage. Not that anything is great in retirement, but it's only a couple percent, literally like a little over 2% mortgage. And so it's not a punishing type. But they really thought, by now we'd be rid of that mortgage. So can we do a large distribution to get rid of this mortgage? Because emotionally, they wanted to get rid of it because they would feel better with it gone. But with the numbers, to keep it made a lot more sense and finish out that 15-year mortgage, what's left of it. So we had to go through the numbers and then go through the emotions. And in the end, they made a great choice. But they were feeling really emotional about the drag of that debt going, through their retirement.
All right, now we get to a big one, market volatility. I'm sure you're talking to folks in your office about how do you feel when the market takes a 20% drop? How does that affect you? This is an area where it's got to be a complicated answer. Like the emotions are important to recognize, but not necessarily important to react on, maybe is a good way to put it.
There's a lot of ways that I could answer this. But one of the perspectives that I try to give them, because nobody's happy in a major market downturn. Nobody's happy. I'm not happy. Nobody's happy.
Yeah. Even though I know it will help me long term, right, to keep investing in a down market, and this will be great in a couple of years.
Yes.
In the moment, it's still not happy about it.
Yeah, that emotion in the moment. I have yet to have somebody come walking into my office saying, "Can you believe it? We're down another 5%. Let's go.
Let's do it."
Never happened. Probably never will, unless they're joking. But what I want to say to people that are going through that always is say, hey, we talked about this in the beginning. If we're going to get an X amount of percent return, you're going to have this much volatility up and down, outside parameters. Everybody loves the up, down. And to get our long-term returns, which ultimately to get to our long-term goals, we have to deal with these fluctuations in the market. And the less the fluctuations, the less long-term return. The more long-term return, typically, talking on averages here. No promises, but that's really the sentiment of how risk is processed. And on those downturns, we just have to remind them. Also, on the upside, we can remind them, if you have extra cash to invest, it's a great time to put money in the market. So those things, you can, at times be able to do that. And of course, if you're in a 401k, like our most of our clients are, putting that money in every paycheck, you're going to hit the high sides of the cycle and the low sides, and that dollar cost averaging is going to pay off over time.
Yeah, you make great points. I mean, honestly, more people should walk into your office and go, woohoo, the market's down. Those that are your younger clients who are further from retirement, that should almost be our reaction sometimes. But yeah, that's a hard one to coach into people. I'm sure even you, Steve, who see the benefits of the down market from the long-term perspective, it's still not a fun day when they happen. So
no, it raises the blood pressure because we have that human instinct that it hurts twice as much to lose a dollar than it does the euphoria of gaining a dollar.
Yeah.
So,
last episode, you pulled out your bottle of Aleve. I feel like you should have some blood pressure medicine to pull out and show us on this episode.
Maybe you could highlight some. I don't even know what blood pressure medicine is. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, we'll wait till we get some sort of blood pressure medicine sponsorship, right?
There we go. All right.
I'm not going to go Google blood pressure medicines. I don't want to get ads for it. All right. What about this one's not really, I don't know if this is an emotion, but sort of a feeling, I guess, is about flexibility in a portfolio or in a financial plan. How much flexibility do you want in your spending in retirement or in your financial plan? That's an interesting one to probably ask couples, especially if you get different answers to that. But break down that one for us a little bit.
Absolutely, and I can give a little bit more context to flexibility. So what I coach pre-retirees, later retirees, is you want to have a base, four walls, if you will, of your retirement. That's your food, your shelter, clothing, all of those main things that you're just living day to day, and you're not really feeling it. You're going to the grocery store, you're not living on any kind of special Elpo diet or anything like that, but you're just living day to day, and that's kind of what we want to make sure is our easy baseline. And then that flexibility piece is like, okay, when things are going well, we can go on the big trips, and when things are not going well, we just kind of hunker down in that four walls routine day to day, and that way we're taking the larger distributions off of up markets and trying to minimize those when things are not as quite as good.
Yeah, I think that's great coverage of that particular element. So we'll move to the next one. And when you ask people in your office how strongly they feel or value giving, that's an easy one to put into this category of feelings and the financial plan.
Yeah, and a lot of that goes to purpose. I have a lot of conversations with pre-retirees that in retirement, we need to make sure we find purpose. And that doesn't mean we find purpose in another job. It could be volunteering, it could be teaching, it could be all different kinds of things. And we've got stories upon stories of what people have done. But we want to make sure that the giving piece, not just of their time or whatever they're going to fill that purpose, but also, what do you want to have as your legacy is another way to say that value of giving. A legacy of, do you have a certain charity? Maybe it's maybe it's a religious organization, maybe it's a health organization. Could be a lot of different things. But how important is that in leaving a legacy to those things? And some people will say, my children are my legacy, and all of it goes to them, and there's nothing wrong with that. But some want to do some additional giving in addition to that, or maybe they didn't have children and that's going to be their legacy. So we have that conversation early and often. To make sure, because the purpose of someone's life is really wrapped into all of that.
I really like that. And I know that's a whole nother podcast all on its own to talk about charitable giving, which we've done in the past and we'll do more in the future on. Let's get to the last example here, though, about feelings and financial plans. How do you feel about leaving a legacy? Kind of dovetails off of that giving conversation, but perhaps a little bit more inward to the family about those kinds of things, but could still wrap into outward giving also.
So that the leaving a financial legacy is wrapped into goals. The number one goal that I would say that everyone, they don't always say it, but I know they have it, especially when I bring it up, is that they don't want to be a burden to their children in retirement financially. That's usually everyone's first number one goal if they can. They don't want to be a burden. The second thing is the financial legacy is, what do they want to leave behind? And the number one answer is the children is the legacy they leave behind. But if they can, it can bless them through, some do education for the grandkids, great grandkids. Some put money into a local private school system. Some might put it into a church, hospital, whatever makes that financial legacy. But it's that feeling that they get from that their life mattered long after they're gone. And that's really the conversation that we have about that financial legacy. And I'll give you one little tidbit of, and not everyone likes to do this, some do, is that I give my clients an opportunity to either do an audio or video recording of what they want to leave, something personal and private, to whoever they're giving this money to, whether it's a child or whether it's an organization. And the amount of emotion that comes out of that meeting when we're doing that recording, and there's coaching beforehand. It's not just off the cuff. We go through it, make sure it's meaningful. But that is one of the things that it's some of the best days I have in this business, is really seeing a life, have a legacy and that deep meaning. It's really fun, even though emotional.
Yeah, absolutely. Really appreciate that perspective to wrap things up here, Steve. At the end of the day, the numbers give us the framework, but the feelings are helpful. They really define what that plan is going to look like and how it truly fits us. And if it was all just numbers and no one cared about anything, no one had preferences, no one had goals and dreams, well then yeah, it would be a pretty easy to put together financial plans. But that's not how life works. We have feelings, we have opinions, we have goals and desires, and we've got to match financial plans and retirements and those visions around all of those moving parts. And that's what Steve's doing each and every day for clients in the office, and can do for you as well. If you're looking to improve your financial situation, your portfolio, Steve is a certified financial planner, not only looks at the investment side, but all of these softer sides of planning as well. How can we bring all of these things together in a portfolio and in a plan that gets you to and through retirement with success, with comfort, with confidence? And if you'd like to look and explore a little bit further what that relationship would look like, next step is to order the toolkit. You can go to powerupyour401k.com. powerupyour401k.com. We've got it linked in the description of today's show. Order the toolkit. That's going to have Steve's book in it. You're going to be able to learn a little bit more about not only Steve, but of course, his philosophies when it comes to planning for retirement, for your financial plans. A lot of great information in that toolkit, in addition to the book. And you can also set up that time to visit one-on-one with Steve and talk about the particulars of your situation, those dreams and goals that you have, and how to get on the right path to accomplishing all of them in retirement, both from the financial side and also from your emotions and feelings, and making sure it's all well balanced. Steve, great breakdown of all this today. Appreciate your guidance, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Walt. Appreciate everyone listening.
This podcast is provided by Powerhouse Financial Advisors, an independent firm with advisory services offered through Parsonex Advisory Services, Inc., PAS, a federally registered investment advisor. The information provided is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered as personalized investment advice. PAS does not guarantee the accuracy, completeness, or suitability of this information for your specific circumstances. Investment decisions should be based on an individual's goals, time horizon, and risk tolerance. Past performance is not indicative of future results, and all investments carry a degree of risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any case studies, testimonials, or endorsements shared in this podcast are illustrative of individual experiences and may not be representative of the experience of all clients. They do not guarantee future performance or success. You should not infer any level of assurance regarding future financial outcomes. Listeners should consult with a qualified financial, tax, or legal professional before making any investment decisions. Parsonex Advisory Services, Inc. does not provide tax or legal advice. Be sure to consult with your tax and legal professionals regarding your specific circumstances. For a copy of our Form ADV Part 2A, which provides additional information about PAS, including our advisory fees and services, please visit powerhousefinancialadvisors.com.